Ed Albert back in the Fox 43 podcast studio. We're talking Locked On Penguins. Today is the first day of the playoffs for the Pittsburgh Penguins. They take on the New York Rangers tonight, game one, tonight at 7 o'clock. And here to discuss all things series related is the host of Locked On Penguins, Hunter Hodies. Hunter, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Ed. I'm glad to be back. I know we did something last week, but it's playoff time. I'm ready to roll.
That's right. It is playoff time. We're talking Pens Rangers. Just let's get some general thoughts as we head into this series. The Penguins finished up well on Friday. They sort of manhandled Columbus for most of that game. I know they tacked on a few goals late, but it really
I think your audio cut out there, Ed, but it was a good last game, to say the least. They came out just on a buzzsaw, to be honest. They definitely were
absolutely.
really, I thought, upset at what happened with the Philadelphia Flyers and the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, the Oilers just outclassed them in every way possible. They come out, score 3 goals, chase JF Berube, and then Merzlikins comes in, gives up a couple goals, but still makes a couple of big saves. The only really bad defensive play I thought was from their penalty kill, which is going to need to be better from how it performed against the Blue Jackets, especially because the Rangers have one of the 5 best power plays in the league, to say the least. So, I thought overall, again, it was a good game. They actually got some depth scoring, which has kind of gone away from them a little bit. Evan Rodriguez got only his 4th goal, and I believe in his 4th goal, and I think in his last 45 games, was finally able to get back on the score sheet. If he gets going again like he was in the first half, he's probably the best player in any team's bottom 6 going into the series. Marcus Pettersson, I didn't know when he turned into Paul Coffey overnight, but he surely was just a one-man wrecking crew in that game. I don't know how much offense.
Hunter, sorry, just thinking that's maybe Pettersson's best game of the season we saw there, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the way he was carrying the puck into the offensive zone, the moves that he was making, I've never really seen him do that, for as long as he's been a Penguin, to be honest. So he was definitely feeling himself. He was really confident. But if he's able to have maybe even just a tenth of that in the playoffs, I think that could go a long way. I've long advocated on the show that the Penguins don't get enough offense from their back end outside of Chris Letang and Mike Matheson. Trevor Riedel, he's been a bit better down the stretch. I finished the regular season with 4 to 5 goals. But, John Marino hasn't really scored since October, November. Pettersson, that was his first goal since October. Brian Dumoulin, he hardly scores nowadays. They're going to need more offense from their back end, I think, if they do want to win this series outside of Letang and Matheson.
All right, so let's switch gears then. We talk about, what to sort of look for here. One of the big things coming in, especially for the Penguins, is injuries. We've got the injury to Jason Zucker. You've got the injury to Tristan Jarry. They're now being classified as day-to-day. So that's encouraging, positive news. Looking at some of the things that came off the morning skate this morning, Zucker looked like he was flying around out there, but still not cleared for contact. In your opinion, Hunter, how do the Penguins get around some of these injury issues, especially with the tough, opponent in the Rangers that we know they've seen them face all season?
Yeah, it's obviously going to be very difficult. I mean, for goaltending wise, Casey DeSmith is going to have to play the best hockey of his life if the Penguins want to win this year. He's no hyperbole there. I don't know if he's going to have to be as good as Fleury was in 2017 against the Capitals, when he basically just carried the Penguins to that series win, where they were outshot, out attempted, high danger wise, all the metrics were against the Penguins, but it was him and some of their finishing ability that was really able to carry the Penguins to the conference final that year. He's going to just have to be just really good. Jason Zucker, it looks like it's not as serious as some thought it was going to be.
Which,
He
thank
did
goodness
take
for
part.
that.
Yeah, that's big. Morning skate, took part in it. Sullivan only said that he's out for game 1. There's a chance he can play in game 2. I do think there is a high likelihood we see him back in this either on Thursday or on Saturday. He's one of the team's best forecheckers. He provides an offensive punch when he is humming that some of these other depth players can't provide. And excuse me, he's a good fit next to Evgeny Malkin. Whoever you want to put on his right wing, Brian Rust, Rickard Rakell. I still think Brian Rust should be down there with Gino. That has the makings of a very good second line. And, the numbers with Zucker and Malkin, they definitely point to that. And, maybe Mike Sullivan wants to put Zucker up on the top line at some point with Sid, because their metrics together when they played when he first came over were ridiculously good too. So he is a loss that, I get it. He's kind of gone Bo Bennett at times with getting hurt over the most random stuff. I mean, it hasn't gotten as bad as, injuring yourself while you're celebrating a goal,
Seriously.
which is what he did a few years ago. But it's still at the point now where I feel bad every time he gets hurt, because, the guy just can't stay healthy. But hopefully this is the last time he gets hurt for a playoff run. But, it's good news that he's going to be back here pretty soon. And hopefully Ed will be able to get Tristan back at some point in this series, though I don't even think he's been back on the ice yet.
Right. And I think the way you mentioned it too, if we're looking at it, lineup wise, the way the lines stack out, I think you're right. I think that, we've shown here over the last couple weeks of the season that when Rust was on Malkin's line and you have Rakell up with Crosby, there seems to be a lot of chemistry there. But, Sullivan's shown a penchant for trying to break that up and move Rakell off that line. So I don't know if that's a Sid choice. I don't know if maybe Sullivan's seeing something different there, but I'm definitely with you on that one. With lineup wise. But all right, let's move on. Also talking lineups, and I know this is something, if anybody follows Hunter on Twitter, if anybody's listening to the Locked On podcast, Locked On Penguins, on the podcast network for the Tegna Locked On network, you're hearing Hunter talk about Kasperi Kapanen a lot, saying that, probably good to get Kapanen out of the lineup. And so I just want to talk a little bit about that here. We've seen him, play really well at times this season, but, for the last few months, it's sort of been off. So the lineup decision comes to you, Hunter. Is Kasperi Kapanen in or out of the lineup?
Well, for tonight, I think he is going to be in the lineup just because Jason Zucker is not ready to play. But if Jason is ready to go on Thursday at Madison Square Garden, I would take Kapanen out. And I would keep Brian Boyle in. Boyle had another goal in the final regular season game. I believe his total was 11 for the regular season. He's been a better player than Kapanen at this point. And, I'm sure you were watching the game. That penalty that Kapanen took when the game was 5-2 in the third period, really lazy, just a dumb play. And then the Jackets score on it to make it 5-3. And then all of a sudden it's a little bit more of a game again, even though it was 5-1 going into the third period. Those are plays you can't have those. No. In the playoffs, especially going up against.
Like you said, especially in the playoffs. Those are the kind of moves that can change a series. That can change a series outlook when you take a dumb penalty like that. And it's not the first time we've seen Kapanen make a bad decision like that throughout the year.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree. And, when he's not scoring, he's really not doing too much. I know his defensive metrics have been better, this year compared to last year. But again, at the end of the day, he's still not producing. That's what they got him for, and he was good last year, and everyone thought he was going to be great this year. But for whatever reason, it hasn't worked out. His confidence has not been there all year. I mean, we're looking at probably potentially the final game of Kapanen's Penguins career tonight, or just overall for this playoff run. I do not see a way Ron Hextall or Brian Burke bring him back or give him a qualifying offer, that's for sure. But I would have him out. I would put Brian Boyle in there at this point. I was against using Boyle because I was hoping that Kapanen was going to be able to turn it around. And I'm not really crazy about Boyle's foot speed at this time for his career. But with how he's producing, with how he's playing compared to Kapanen, right now I think the choice is easy, at least for me.
I definitely agree with you there on that one. And, we're talking lineup decisions here. And you mentioned Boyle, and I think that sort of leads to where, I kind of want to go next. Boyle has been huge, I think, this year when he's been placed on the penalty kill for the Penguins. And, that's one of the things I want to talk about next is special teams. We've got the Penguins penalty kill, which has been terrific all season long, and a really potent Rangers power play. So, we talk about the lineup decisions that need to be made, and obviously we've got the injuries that we're dealing with, but when you bring up a name like Brian Boyle, Chris Letang factoring in on special teams, no matter if it's the penalty kill or the power play, there's a lot of things that you look at when you're trying to put that lineup card together that, that's why Mike Sullivan's getting paid the big bucks. But, what are you seeing when it comes down to Pens PK versus Rangers power play?
it's an unstoppable force really versus an immovable object. I think the biggest key for the Penguins in this, you got to stop Chris Kreider. He made a living on that Rangers power play this year. This is a player that, before this season, I believe he did not even score 30 goals in a single season once. Now he's up to 50 plus. Half of those basically came on the power play. Penguins have to contain him in front of the net. That's been an issue, I would say, down the stretch where the Penguins are not playing as well as they should be in front of their net compared to where they were, December, January, February, and March. If they can slow him down, I think that can definitely, turn things in their direction on the penalty kill. Mika Zibanejad, he has a really nice release on the one timer. The Penguins are going to have to get into their shooting lanes. Adam Fox obviously is amazing at moving the puck at the point. Panarin is a very silky shooter and a passer. You have to be on the lookout for everything he does. I'm curious to see how aggressive the Penguins are going to be on the PK. They run kind of like a wedge +1 where they kind of have a triangle around like the slot, high danger areas, and then they have a player up top who kind of just is that chaos kind of player. So, how aggressive does Mike Vellucci, who runs the PK, want to get with that? Does he want to put him back a little bit, let the Rangers do what they want from the outer skirts of the offensive zone? Or is he going to have him really pressure up there to make, Adam Fox's life, a living, well, you know the word I'm going to say for that.
HE double hockey sticks. Yeah. And I think I agree with you too, Hunter. I think the way you're looking at it makes a lot of sense. I'd put the pressure on them. The Penguins have seemed to done very well this year when they're applying that pressure on the penalty kill. I know we don't have a ton of shorthanded opportunities this year, but when they're applying the pressure and they're getting up into the face of the other team's the back guys, when they're trying to quarterback the power play, that's when I think we've seen them have the most success.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I won't say it's going to make or break the series, but it's definitely a massive matchup to watch. And honestly, vice versa, the Penguins power play versus the Rangers penalty kill. The Penguins power play has been awful these last 2 to 3 weeks. And
that's an understatement.
They have not been. So I believe they're like 2 for their last 28, 2 for the last 30, something like that. That also has to get turned around in a big way if the Penguins are going to win this series. But going back obviously to the original point, Mike Sullivan even said after that last regular season game that he thought the penalty kill has slipped up in recent weeks. So he thinks that there's still a level that they can get back to killing penalties. But yeah, with how the Penguins have played 5v5 versus the Rangers this year, obviously that has to be a lot better. They only scored 1 goal that came from Brian Boyle. If they start getting screwed on the special teams, they're going to really be up a creek.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that there. I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the playmakers, and that's going to lead us to where we're going next. I want to get to some series predictions with you, Hunter. But I think, the Penguins playmakers are going to make the difference in this series, I think. Obviously, the Rangers are a younger, faster team, but they're also not as playoff tested. And I think you've got a group of, the core Penguins. They've suffered some early round exits here the last few seasons. And I think that it's going to come down to, Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Gensel, Rust, these core guys that they've had. Are they able to step up again, since that Stanley Cup run? Can they win a series round here? And I think that's really the big test, You've got an inexperienced Rangers team come playoff time. And so, we've seen them manhandle the Pens during the regular season, but is that going to translate playoff time? Will they have that same level of intensity? Will they be able to match that in a long, what could potentially be a long series? So I'm going to turn it over to you now. Let's talk series predictions and where do you see things going, Hunter?
So, Ed, the last 3 years, I took the Penguins to beat the Islanders in 2019. They lost. They played Montreal in the play-in round. I took the Penguins to win. They lost. Then last year, I said the third time's the charm, right? So I took them to win. They lost. So I'm a little bit of a superstitious person. I think the Rangers are going to win this series. It's funny. I don't think I've ever seen the Penguins fan base less confident about this series.
Yep.
in the last 16 years than any playoff series they've been in, maybe except 2015 against the Rangers when Chris Letang was out with that concussion. I think that was when Shane Doan like shoved him on the boards and he was just out. Or maybe 2007 when the Penguins just first came into the playoffs. But they were also just so young at that point in Sid and Gino.
Yep.
It's just without a starting goaltender who's given you a lot of Vezina caliber play, it's very hard to see the Penguins winning this series. For them to win it, they're going to obviously have to get great goaltending from him, but they're also going to have to finish their chances, which is something that they were not doing for all of the regular season. They were in the bottom third of the league in terms of, finishing their chances versus expected goals. You can't have that in the playoffs. You're going to have to turn it back to something like 2017 if you're going to want to win the series, and you're going to hope to have Igor Shesterkin, I guess, not play nearly as well as he did during the regular season. I think it's going to be close. I've seen some people say Rangers in 4, Rangers in 5. I don't personally think it's going to be that kind of series. I have it going 7 games, but I have the Rangers winning it at MSG.
All right, so Hunter going Rangers in 7. I can't say that I disagree with you on that one. When I look at my series predictions, I'm sort of like you. I just don't, you mentioned the Penguins fan base not having a lot of confidence. I don't see it either. It's not like they were the typical Penguins down the stretch where they, showed a lot of confidence that, they were very shaky, a lot of ups and downs. They seem to have lost some of that identity that they had once the calendar turned. So I'm not nearly as generous as you are, Hunter. I'm going Rangers in 6. And I think, obviously I think the Penguins will take a few from the Rangers, but I think that the Rangers' speed is going to outmatch them. And if you mentioned Shesterkin, if he provides any sort of play like he did in the regular season games against the Penguins, it's going to be a very difficult series. And I think that between the Penguins playmakers and Shesterkin, that's where this series is going to hinge. And I don't see any other way around it. If he stands on his head like he did during the regular season matchups, this is going to be a difficult and another frustrating playoff series for this group of Penguins.
The last few years, they've gone up against some of the best goaltenders in the league. Ilya Sorokin last year stands on his head. Carey Price back in the bubble. 2019, Robin Leonard has a great year. They played Braden Holtby so many times, Henrik Lundqvist. I mean, the number of great goaltenders this team has had to go through, to win Stanley Cups during this window is nothing short of, it's amazing, truly. And they're going to have perhaps their biggest test of them all starting tonight.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Hunter Hodies, thank you so much for joining us here again in the Fox 43 podcast studio. That's the big series starts tonight. We hope that you'll, stay with us. Hunter will be back. We'll try to catch up with him throughout the series. And if the Pens somehow outdo the predictions that Hunter and I have made, we will, obviously be back in for another series as well. So I know that, you Penguins fans out there are watching, and some may not be happy that I took the Rangers and that Hunter took the Rangers, but hopefully the team proves us wrong. So thanks again to Hunter for joining us here in the Fox 43 podcast studio. I'm Ed Albert, and don't forget that you can listen to the Locked On Penguins podcast on the place that you find all of your podcasts, wherever you find them, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Locked On Penguins podcast that Hunter hosts is there for you to check out. So that's going to do it for us. And everybody have a great day, and let's go Pens.